Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. The channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. As such, the channel is not afraid to challenge existing beliefs in order to contribute to the advancement of knowledge. This presentation is titled "The Killings in the Middle Belt. Where are the leaders of the region? Why the great silence?" The purpose of this presentation is to bring focus on the killings in the Middle Belt by asking why the political and military leaders of the region seemed undisturbed or continue to remain quiet or nonchalant while thousands of people have been killed, several communities have been sacked, and hundreds of thousands of victims have been forced to live in internally displaced persons camps while the invaders take over their communities. The governors in the Middle Belt seem so powerless and hopeless because they are too focused on being in power. Hence, they are lost and do not know what to do while the killings continue. So far, only Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma, retired, has uncompromisingly spoken about the disaster befalling the region and the country. This is the map of Nigeria showing the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. So the Middle Belt, which is north central of Nigeria, is the main focus of this discussion today. That does not take away the fact that the violence is spreading to all over the country, but today we are focusing on the middle of the country, which on the map here is referred to as the North Central. Here you have the states that make up the Middle Belt or Central Nigeria. They include Kwara, Niger, Kogi, Nasarawa, Plateau, and Benue states. However, for purpose of this discussion, Kaduna, Plateau, Zamfara, and other states are touched because the violence is spreading. But this is the main focus of the discussion here. Introduction. Central Nigeria is like an abattoir where cattle are slaughtered because thousands of Nigerians in Benue, Kogi, Kwara, Benue, Nasarawa, Niger, Plateau, in addition to Kaduna, Taraba, Benue, and Zamfara states have been killed by herdsmen, kidnappers, bandits, and Islamic jihadists. In places like Benue, Katsina, and Zamfara states in the northeast and northwest zones, the political and traditional leaders have been active trying to find solutions to prevent the attacks, killings of people, and the sacking of entire communities. However, in central Nigeria, which is also referred to as the Middle Belt, the killings and sacking of entire communities by armed herdsmen, kidnappers, and bandits have assumed genocidal proportions as villagers are attacked and killed repeatedly. It is not unusual for violent herdsmen to kill 70, 80, 100, and 200 persons in one unprovoked attack. These killings have been going on in Benue, Nasarawa, Niger, and Plateau states endlessly, with the Nigerian security forces either overwhelmed or unwilling to fully mobilize to confront and neutralize the attackers. Now, let's look at some statistics on the victims of violent attacks and killings in Nigeria. Due to the failure of Nigeria's security forces, namely the Army, Air Force, Police, DSS, and others to act decisively and put an end to the violent killings of Nigerians, about 2 million Nigerians have been forced to live in internally displaced persons camps because their towns and villages have been attacked and occupied by herdsmen, kidnappers, and bandits. These violent criminals have taken over some communities in Benue, Kwara, Nasarawa, Niger, and Plateau states, as well as some in Benue, Kaduna, and Zamfara states, as they displace the indigenous. Now, let's look at the number of Nigerians in IDP camps in 2023. So in 2023, as you can see, Benue State had the highest number of people living in IDP camps, followed by Katsina. Just look at the numbers. Zamfara, Kaduna, Sokoto, Plateau, Nasarawa, and Kano states, with a total of 1,092,196 people in 2023 lived in IDP camps in Nigeria and maybe outside Nigeria. There were about 264,553 Nigerians in IDP and host community camps in Niger State in 2024. 2. There are about 510,182 persons in IDP camps in Benue State in 2025. 3. By April 2024, there were 62,689 internally displaced persons in Taraba State. 4. There are about 1,322,766 internally displaced persons across 10 states in Nigeria in 2025. This is a newspaper headline from Vanguard. As you can see, on April 29, 2023, 6,000 killed, communities sacked, 2 million farmers displaced, Buhari days darkest for Benue. This is just a newspaper headline report about the killings. Here again, Vanguard, February 18, 2025. The headline is Insecurity. Fulani herdsmen have taken over swath of land in Benue. Rep raises alarm. Now, let's look at the reasons for the killings and destruction of communities. So, what are the reasons? Many reasons have been advanced by Nigerians to explain the wanton killings and destruction of properties in Nigeria. Some of the reasons are: 1. The Fulanis have been alleged to be trying to Islamize the country. Hence, they send their jihadists who operate as herdsmen, kidnappers, bandits, and militants to attack indigenous groups. This is why they are attacking, killing, and destroying indigenous communities so that they can take over and Islamize the country through the leadership of the Fulanis as Othman Dan Fodio did in the 19th century to establish the Sokoto Caliphate. 2. The Fulanis want to replace the indigenous people of Nigeria with their kith and kin from other parts of Central and West Africa. This means that they want to capture and make Nigeria a Fulani homeland and bring all their peoples to Nigeria to settle as a Fulani country. 3. Fulani cattle herders complain that grazing grounds have been drastically reduced, thereby preventing them from feeding their cows. 4. The lack of grazing lands leads to herders and farmers clashes that have resulted in killings on both sides. 5. Fulani herders complain that their cattle are stolen by rustlers, hence they must carry guns to protect their cattle and themselves. They also complain about the attacks and killings of their people. 6. There is also the view that the violent attacks, killings, and destruction of indigenous communities are being sponsored by rich cattle owners as well as military and police officers. There have been speculations in some quarters that some retired top military officers own most of the cows and are responsible for arming the herdsmen. 7. Some of the armed groups and thugs are recruited by rich miners who operate artisanal and small-scale mining operations and want to drive away people from communities that have large deposits of minerals, especially gold, tin, lithium, cobalt, and rare earth minerals. And 8. That climate change is a causative factor in generating herders-farmers clashes as nomadic herders moved downward to the Middle Belt and southern Nigeria to seek pastures for their cattle, thereby destroying farmlands and igniting conflict. 9. Another reason for the mayhem is that the killing of people and destruction of communities are products of intra-communal and intercommunal struggle by various ethnic groups to control territory due to the potential wealth that could be generated through mining of various minerals. Thus, the situation is very complex. Perhaps the complexity is responsible for the great silence that the political and military leaders of the region have maintained. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So let's look at some of the destruction of property and communities in the Middle Belt. Again, you see houses being burned down, people driven away from their communities. Here you have women protesting and carrying goods from the refugee center. Again, you see how the invaders, they will literally set the houses on fire in order to drive the residents so that they can take over the area. Here you have mass burial for scores of people, probably about 70 people that were killed at one time. Here you have 73 people that were killed at one time being buried. It is so sad, and the federal government of Nigeria has not been able to do anything to stop it. Here you have Nigerians in a refugee camp. Those that were driven from their communities by the invaders. Here you have refugees in IDP camp near Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. These are Nigerians, again, that have been driven away from their communities. So the question is, why the great silence by the leaders of the region? Despite the existential threat offered by the violent herdsmen, bandits, and kidnappers and Islamic jihadists, the top political and military leaders of the Middle Belt or North Central Zone have remained mute or unconcerned or nonchalant. As a result, they are not utilizing their enormous political and military influence to compel Nigeria to declare emergency and deploy the military fully to stop the mayhem and reclaim communities that have been captured by the herdsmen, kidnappers, and bandits. So the question is, why do the leaders in this region remain quiet? So let's look at some of the prominent military personnel from the Middle Belt or Central Nigeria. So here you have prominent active and retired military generals from the Middle Belt. They include 1. Retired General Yakubu Gowon, the second military head of state of Nigeria. Retired General Ibrahim Babangida, who was forced out of power, former military head of state. Retired Lieutenant General Abdul Salami Abubakar, former head of state. Retired Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma, former Chief of Army Staff and Minister of Defense. General Christopher Gwabin Musa, the current Chief of Defense Staff. Major General Abdul Salam Abubakar. Major General Moses Gara. Rear Admiral Hamad Gaya. Retired General Abdullah Sheleng. Retired General Ishaya Bamai. These are only a few of the many generals and senior military officers that the Middle Belt has produced for Nigeria. These are their pictures. On the left, you have General Yakubu Gowon, the second military head of state of Nigeria. On the right, you have General Ibrahim Babangida, a former military head of state. You have General Abdul Salami Abubakar on the left, and on the right, you have retired Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma. Now, let's look at some prominent politicians from the Middle Belt. They include Senator David Mark, a former military general and a senator. Babachi Lawal, former secretary to the government of the Federation. Gabriel Soswam, former governor and a senator. Samuel Otom, former governor. Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduagan. George Akume, secretary to the government of the Federation under the current administration of Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Yahya Bello, former governor, Caleb Mutfwang, the current governor. Abdullahi Sule, Mohammed Umaru Baku, Osman Ododo, the current governor, Dr. Bitrus Pogu, a political leader of the Middle Belt, Pius Ara, Senator Ireti Kindigbe. These are only a few of the prominent political leaders and politicians from the Middle Belt or Central Nigeria. On the right, you have Senator David Mark. On the left, you have Gabriel Soswam. On the right, you have Dr. George Akume. You have Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan. You have Babasha Lawal. And you have Senator Ireti Kingibe. These are only just a few listed here. Now, the question is, why are Middle Belt political and military leaders remain nonchalant about the killings? As shown by the pictures above, the Middle Belt or Central Nigeria contains some of the most influential military and political leaders in Nigeria. Yet, they say very little about the killings, the destruction of their communities, and the displacement of indigenous of the region, particularly in Benue, Kaduna, Kwara, Nasarawa, Niger, Plateau, and Taraba states. The region has 3 former heads of state of Nigeria, including A. General Yakubu Gowon, B. General Ibrahim Babangida, and C. Lieutenant General Abdul Salami Abubakar. There are many questions that require answers. 1. Why is it that the political leaders of the region have not been able to put pressure on the federal government to act decisively? 2. Why is it that retired and active senior military officers from the region, including 3 former military heads of state, have not been able to exert pressure on the Nigerian military to fully deploy and stop the violent herders, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists? And 3. Why are the serving senior military officers from the region not issuing a warning that they will support the indigenous communities to defend themselves against the marauding bands that are terrorizing the region for years if the federal government fails to act decisively? 4. Why is it that instead of putting political pressure to stop the bloodbath, the politicians in the region, including the governors, are more interested in being in power rather than mobilizing their resources to put an end to the mayhem? 5. Why is it that the governors, local government chairs, traditional leaders, and civil society organizations are not petitioning the economic community of West African states, the African Union, the United Nations, and the International Criminal Court to intervene and stop the killings and displacement of indigenous Nigerians from their ancestral homelands? Again, why the great silence? It is very puzzling. The great silence or quietness on the part of these leaders tend to generate further questions. One, are there, that is, the military generals and politicians aware or complicit in the plan to displace the indigenous of the region through violent killings, taking over of the communities, and the desire to Islamize Nigeria? Two, do some of them own cows and want unrestricted grazing lands for their cattle? And three, have some of them been compromised through financial and political rewards to maintain silence? Four, are some of the political and military leaders responsible for mining solid minerals, including gold, and want to displace the indigenous owners of the land so that they can operate freely? Five, are their political careers more important to the politicians than getting involved actively to stop the killings? And six, do they have a plan to resist but are waiting for the right time to do so? It is shameful that it is the traditional leaders and leaders of other zones of Nigeria that have been screaming for the federal government to take appropriate action to stop the killings, while those in the region remain quiet. Only Lieutenant General Danjuma has advised Nigerians to defend themselves. While addressing a coronation ceremony, he advised, and I quote, Nigerians to find out how bandits get arms so that they could have theirs for self-defense, and I unquote. 5 years later, he, that is General Danjuma, repeated that Nigerians should defend themselves by saying, and I quote, it is now very clear that the government alone cannot protect us. We must stand up and defend ourselves, our families, and our lands before these criminals overrun the entire country, and I unquote. Again, of all the political and military leaders of the region, it is only Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma that has drawn public attention to the genocidal killings by speaking boldly. He is the one who inferred fearlessly that the Nigerian security forces are colluding with the violent herdsmen, kidnappers, bandits, and Islamists to displace the population of the region. Hence, they are not interested in stopping the killings. Please see the newspaper headline below. This is the newspaper headline, Premium Times, and the title is Military Police Complicit in Killings Across Nigeria, T.Y. Danjuma. This was March 24, 2018. See, he was very bold in saying how he felt about the situation. Other top leaders just remain quiet as if they are not seeing what is going on. Now, let's look at the sheepishness of the victims of the killings. Apart from the fact that the political and military leaders of the region are not putting pressure on the federal government to deploy the military fully to dislodge the killers, the citizens of the region too are acting funny. After years of loved ones being killed and communities destroyed, they are still waiting on the federal government of Nigeria to save them from the violent mayhem. Even after Lieutenant General Danjuma has advised them to arm and defend themselves, these Nigerians continue to make themselves easy prey for the invaders to attack and kill them with ease. Due to their failure to mobilize themselves fully and take countermeasures to push back the violent killers, other Nigerians wonder how long they can continue to offer themselves as victims. They should know that it is a natural right to defend oneself against being killed, especially since Nigerian government does not have the political will to do so. International law supports self-defense against aggression. Indeed, the behaviors of the political and military leaders and the citizens of the Middle Belt are puzzling. Take note, it should be noted that it was the Middle Belt ethnic groups that fought and stopped the spreading of Islam to southern Nigeria during the Othman Dan Fodio's revolution. What made these ethnic groups to change and become so helpless today? The people of the Middle Belt, stop waiting for someone to come and fight for you. You have a duty to protect yourself and your community. Governors, stop dancing around in circles and take practical security measures to protect your citizens. Stop expecting the federal government to come and protect your citizens when you know that the federal government, for whatever reason, is not interested in protecting its citizens. The governors of the Middle Belt states should spend their security votes to buy drones that can assist the vigilantes to monitor their communities 24 hours. Recruit more people into the vigilant groups. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please do not fail to subscribe to the channel. There are many other interesting presentations, so please subscribe to the channel and listen to the other presentations on different topics. Again, thank you very much.